If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.
A teacher found a baby in the stairwell. She adopted him and raised him as her own. But when his millionaire mother appeared, the 17-year-old said something in court that left everyone speechless. Dear friends, before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from and how old you are. Enjoy the story. Dear God, what is that? A baby crying? Marta froze on the stair landing between the 4th and 5th floors. Her ears weren't deceiving her. Somewhere above, she could clearly hear a faint, trembling cry, a baby's cry. Her fingers clutched the worn strap of her school bag full of notebooks. After 6 literature classes and 2 hours of tutoring, her head was spinning, her legs ached, and even the old building itself seemed to hum with the chill of January. Maybe someone's TV? She whispered, stepping higher. But the higher she climbed, the clearer the sound became, quivering, pitiful, almost like a kitten, but undeniably human. 5th floor. The crying came from around the corner, near the trash bin. Marta swallowed, her heart pounding in her throat. She turned the corner and saw a bundle. An ordinary old floral blanket, the kind found in almost every apartment. Inside it, a baby, she breathed, crouching down. A real baby. A tiny red face scrunched from crying, half-closed eyes, translucent eyelashes wet with tears, newborn. Marta gently touched the baby's cheek. It was cold. The blanket barely covered the small body, and beside it lay a notebook page folded into quarters. With frozen fingers, she unfolded the note. I can't raise him. I'm sorry. 3 words, scrawled in shaky handwriting. No name. No explanation. How could this happen? Marta whispered, looking around. The empty stairwell offered no reply. Outside, the wind howled. From the apartment across the hall came the muffled sound of a TV melodrama. Marta removed her scarf, wrapped it tightly around the baby, and pressed him to her chest. The child whimpered louder, as if sensing warmth and finally voicing his protest against the cold and loneliness. Shoo, shhh. It's okay, little one, she whispered instinctively, rocking the bundle. Just then, the apartment door across the hall creaked open, and a gray head in curlers peeked out. Martita, is that you making a fuss? The neighbor asked, then gasped as she saw what the young teacher was holding. Holy Mary, a baby. Dolores, he was just. Here, Marta managed to say, handing over the note. The elderly woman put on her glasses, read the message, and threw up her hands. You have to call the police, Martita. This is awful. In weather like this. Yes, of course, Marta nodded, but didn't move. She stared at the red face nestled in her scarf, and something strange stirred in her chest. It was as if her heart was stretching, expanding, and filling with a burning sensation that stole her breath. Come inside, Dolores fussed. I'll warm a bottle, make some tea. You call the police, dear. Dolores's tiny kitchen smelled of tamales and valerian. She bustled about boiling water, hunting for warm towels. Marta sat silently at the table, clutching the now quiet baby to her chest, unable to bring herself to pick up the old rotary phone. Martita, what are you going to do? The neighbor finally asked, placing a strong tea in front of her. Will you give him to an orphanage? Marta flinched as if electrocuted. An orphanage? She pictured the charity concerts her school hosted at one, peeling walls, sagging beds, children with identical haircuts and lifeless eyes, overworked caretakers with empty smiles. How can I give him up? She burst out. He's all alone in the world. Sweet girl, sighed Dolores, he's not a kitten. He's a person. How will you raise him? You've got nothing, no husband, no money. Just a tiny school apartment and a teacher's salary. But Marta wasn't listening. She gently pulled back the blanket's edge, steadying the tiny fingers curled into fists. The baby opened his eyes, dark, damp, vacant like all newborns. But to Marta, it felt as though he was looking right into her soul. I'll manage, she said, not even believing herself. Somehow, I will. You're going to adopt him? The neighbor gasped. Are you out of your mind? You're only 27, single, living on a school salary. Who else will take him? Marta whispered fervently, afraid the baby might hear and be hurt. Look at him, he's so tiny. Who wants him? No one. But I do. She said the last words so quietly that Dolores didn't catch them or pretended not to. She pursed her lips, shook her head, but said nothing. She poured herself some tea and stared into her cup. What are you going to do? Get the paperwork? I don't know how, but I will. It was 2 a.m. by the time Marta returned to her room in the communal apartment. Peeling wallpaper, metal bed with sagging springs, and her one treasure, a bookshelf full of classics. She should have returned earlier, But she and Dolores had waited for the local officer. When he finally showed up rumpled, tired, reeking of cigarettes, he just tapped his temple and scoffed. "You understand what you're getting into, teacher? That's 18 years of hard labor at home." He mumbled something about tests, the mother possibly being found, and "think long and hard, girl." But Marta clenched her jaw and shook her head. By then, the baby had woken, screaming, and she had to run to the 24-hour pharmacy for formula and a bottle. Now she sat on the edge of her bed, holding the bottle to the baby's greedy mouth and thinking, "God, what am I doing? What am I getting myself into?" The wall clock ticked in the silence bought long ago by her mother. Behind the wall, Uncle Pedro the plumber snored, an old drunk, but harmless. Tomorrow she had to be at school by the first lesson, and here she was, holding a newborn. "Don't cry, little one," she whispered when the baby fussed again. "Mama won't leave you. Mama." The word hit her like a wave. Her Marta Lopez, 27, single, a mother? "I'll be your mama and papa and your whole world," she promised, not sure whether she spoke to herself or to the child. The baby settled down, soothed by warmth and milk. Tiny eyelashes fluttered in sleep. Marta gently placed him beside her on the bed, surrounding him with pillows so he wouldn't roll off. And she didn't sleep at all. She was afraid to move. Afraid he might stop breathing. Afraid he'd wake up and she wouldn't be there, that it had all been a dream. Or worse, that his real mother would come and take him away. Or that child services would arrive and take him from her. At dawn, the baby woke and cried again. She had to feed him again, then change the makeshift diaper and old towel folded up. She wrapped him in her own flannel blanket and decided to wash the one she found him in. At 8 a.m., she called the school. "Domingo, I'm feeling unwell." "Yes," suddenly. "No, I won't be able to come today. Please find a substitute." And for the whole day until evening, she fed him, rocked him, and just stared at this tiny being that had fallen into her life out of nowhere. That evening, Dolores stopped by, bringing a baby blanket, some infant clothes left over from her grandchildren, and a bottle of valerian. "Here, Marta, you'll need this." "Dolores," Marta suddenly said, holding the sleeping infant close, "he doesn't belong to anyone. You understand? He was abandoned. He's no one's. He's yours now, Martita," the old woman said quietly, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "He's yours, since you've taken him in." The next few days blurred together into one endless stretch of sleeplessness and exhaustion. Her first visit to the police station, filling out the paperwork for the found child, a statement to Child Welfare Services, the pediatric clinic tests, vaccines. She was referred to the Department of Social Services. "Come on, pick a name quickly, Mama," said the tired middle-aged woman at the desk. "There's a line." Marta froze. A name? She hadn't even thought about it. "Diego," she blurted out. "I'll name him Diego." "Why Diego?" Dolores asked later, as they examined the new birth certificate. "Lopez, Diego." "Diego is a beautiful name," Marta smiled. "Strong. So he grows up strong." The documents were done, but the challenges were only beginning. She had to quit her job, but fortunately, the school principal, Domingo Ramirez, was understanding. "Marta, you're a valuable teacher. As soon as you're able, come back. In the meantime, I'll assign you some after-school tutoring hours. You can work from home with struggling students. It's not much, but at least it's something." The social services office helped her apply for child benefits. A small amount, of course, but combined with private tutoring and her meager savings, it was just enough to get by at first. The hardest part was everyday life. Marta had no idea how much a baby needed: diapers, onesies, sleepers, caps, bottles, pacifiers, rattles, powders, creams. Luckily, Dolores brought over a box of baby things left from her grandchildren, and the women at school, upon hearing about Marta's sudden motherhood, chipped in whatever they could. Living with a suddenly acquired newborn was a real trial. Neighbors whispered behind her back, "She probably had the baby in secret and now pretends she just found him." But no one said anything to her face, and Marta was grateful for that. At night, she didn't sleep rocking, feeding, changing diapers. During the day, as soon as Diego napped, she grabbed student notebooks and did tutoring sessions at home. She often fell asleep at the table and woke to a baby's cry. And the strangest thing was, day by day, sleepless night after sleepless night, with every washed diaper this tiny being became more and more hers. She saw him first thing in the morning. She thought of him as she dozed off between feedings. His smile, still reflexive, unconscious, made her heart stop, then race uncontrollably. It was the spring of 2007. The country was going about its business, debating economic reforms, the upcoming presidential elections, new social programs. But in a small room of a communal apartment, Marta Lopez, recently a mother, rocked her 4-month-old son in her arms and whispered, "Look, baby, how beautiful it is outside. Spring has come. Your very first spring." Diego cooed and stared at the dancing sunbeams on the ceiling. And Marta thought how foolish she used to be, complaining about tiredness and money. Now she wasn't just tired, she was collapsing from exhaustion. She wasn't just saving, she was denying herself everything but the bare essentials. But for the first time in her life, she had something real, something warm, smelling of milk, smiling at her with a toothless mouth. "It doesn't matter whose blood runs in your veins. What matters is whose heart loves you," she whispered, kissing her son's chubby cheek. And in that moment, Diego suddenly and clearly said, "Mama." Marta's breath caught. She stared at her son, not believing her ears. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Mama," Diego repeated, looking straight into her eyes and laughing. Marta hugged him tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face, tears she didn't want to, and couldn't, stop. "Yes, baby," she whispered, kissing the warm crown of his head. "I'm your mama forever." Marta's fingers slipped from the needle again. The kitchen clock ticked past 3 in the morning. The lamp, dimmed with a newspaper cover, cast a soft light on a pair of little pants she was hemming. In the next room, 3-year-old Diego was snoring softly. Marta rubbed her inflamed eyes and instinctively stretched her aching back. Tomorrow morning she had 4 classes at school, 2 private students in the evening, and now sewing baby clothes for a neighbor. Life had become a never-ending race for income. Kindergarten, groceries, clothes, toys, everything needed money. Her teacher's salary vanished the moment she received it. Thankfully, she had managed to move out of the communal apartment into a tiny 1-bedroom, an inheritance from a distant aunt. Old wallpaper, squeaky floors, but her own roof over her head. Marta carefully folded the hemmed pants and turned off the light. She tiptoed into the room and lay down next to her son. Diego mumbled something in his sleep and rolled over, pressing his nose into her shoulder. At that touch, all her exhaustion melted away. She stroked his soft hair and smiled into the dark. "Marta, may I walk you home?" Antonio Gutierrez, the physics teacher, stood at the school exit with a bouquet of wildflowers. Good-natured, balding, with kind eyes and a soft smile. For a month now, he had been showing his affection, carrying her bag, offering tea in the staff room. "Thank you, Antonio, but I'm in a hurry." Marta clutched her stack of notebooks tighter. "I have to pick up Diego from daycare." "I'll come with you," the physics teacher offered enthusiastically. "I've been wanting to meet your son for a while." On the way, he chatted about the latest teaching conference, the new school principal, how his class did on their test. Marta half listened, mentally calculating whether she'd have time to stop for milk. At the daycare, Antonio suddenly went quiet, adjusted his glasses nervously, and blurted out, "Marta, marry me." She froze with her hand raised toward the doorbell. "Excuse me?" "Marry me," he repeated, blushing. "I've been a widower for 6 years. My son, Carlos, is grown. And you're raising a child alone. Don't get me wrong, I'm not doing this out of pity. I've had feelings for you for a long time." Diego came running out of his group, spotted his mom, and flung himself into her arms. "Mommy, I made a dinosaur out of clay." Marta scooped up her 5-year-old son, hugging him tightly, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and modeling clay. "Who's that?" Diego asked loudly, noticing the unfamiliar man with flowers. "That's my colleague," Marta replied. "Antonio." That evening, after putting her son to bed, she called the physics teacher. "Antonio, I'm sorry. I can't. I have my son and I don't need anyone else. But I'll love him like my own," he whispered earnestly into the phone. "That's not the point," Marta said quietly. "I'm just not ready." After hanging up, she sat in the kitchen for a long time, gazing at the darkening sky outside the window. Antonio was a good man, reliable, kind. Life would be easier, calmer with him. But the thought of a third person entering their home made her uneasy. Her world with Diego was fragile, built for 2, and she wasn't ready to let anyone else in. When Diego was 6, he fell seriously ill. It started as a simple cold but turned into double pneumonia. Marta rushed to the cupboard where she kept her emergency savings money set aside for a winter coat and boots. Hospital corridors, the smell of disinfectant, 4 drips, inhalations. Diego lay pale, his facial features sharpened, breathing with a wheeze. At night, his fever would spike, and Marta didn't leave his bedside, changing cold compresses and whispering childhood prayers. Marta, you should go home and rest, urged Nurse Nina, with whom she'd quickly become friends. You've been on your feet for 2 days. You'll collapse. I can't, Marta shook her head. What if he wakes up and I'm not there? He'll be scared. When the crisis passed, the doctor said with concern, his lungs are weak. He needs a health retreat, sea air, sunshine. Marta nodded, already calculating how many extra tutoring sessions she'd need to take, how many nights sewing, to save up for the trip. I'll manage, she whispered, watching Diego, now recovering, coloring with the pencils she brought him to the hospital. Mommy, look, it's you. 6-year-old Diego held out a drawing. Marta took the paper and froze. Against a bright yellow background, he had drawn a woman with disproportionately large eyes and long arms. Around her head was something like a halo, and at the bottom, in bold block letters, it read, My mom is the most beautiful. You drew me so pretty, she whispered, a lump rising in her throat. You are the most beautiful, Diego replied seriously, and the kindest. I love you more than anyone in the world. She pulled him close, hiding her tears in his hair. My God, where does this tiny person get so much love and tenderness? Martita, at least paint your nails or something, sighed Dolores, dropping by to visit. Your hands look like a farmer's calloused all over. You're still young, but you look. She didn't finish, but Marta knew exactly what she meant, the dull eyes, early wrinkles, the ever-tired face. But there was no time or money for manicures. I bought new paints for Diego, she smiled. Look how bright they are. The boy sat at the table, mixing colors on his palette with great concentration. At 10, he was already confidently painting landscapes, portraits, animals. His art teacher said he had real talent. He's growing into a fine young man, Dolores agreed. What's he painting now? The sea, Marta explained. We went to the coast last summer for a retreat. He still can't forget it. And why didn't you walk along the beach? Always stuck in your books. Marta shrugged. She had received the retreat voucher as a single mother, but only for Diego. She had to pay for herself, and even then, barely scraped by. While her son splashed in the sea, Marta worked as a cleaner at the same resort to earn money for the return tickets. Mom, why don't we have any photos from when I was born? From the hospital? Diego asked one day. They were going through an old photo album, and he was studying pictures of himself already crawling. Marta froze. She had feared that question for 10 years. We lost them during the move, she said, trying to keep her voice natural. When we moved from the communal flat, a box with the albums got soaked. A lot of the pictures were ruined. Diego nodded thoughtfully, but she felt he didn't quite believe her. Strange, Marta never got married, someone whispered in the teacher's lounge through the slightly open door. That boy of hers is such a handsome one. Took after her such a beauty. You'd think someone would have snapped her up. Maybe she's got a tough personality? Or a secret? What secret? Just a single mom. There are thousands like her. Still strange, though. Marta froze in the corridor, clutching her stack of notebooks tighter to her chest. Then she straightened her back and pushed the door open. Good afternoon, colleagues. The gossips fell silent, staring into their teacups. The years flew by. Now Diego had teenage acne, a deepening voice, and serious conversations. Mom, I want to be an artist, he declared at 14. A professional one. Marta looked at her son, tall, lean, with a sincere gaze in his intelligent eyes. He had long since outgrown her, but still kissed her on the cheek every evening before going to his room. That's not a very practical profession, she began cautiously. It'll be hard to earn a living. But you always said we should do what we love. She sighed. She had indeed said that. She had chosen a beloved but underpaid career for herself, and the result was constant money struggles. All right, she said at last. If that's your calling, I'll support you. And just like that, their lives were filled with art school, exhibitions, competitions. Marta never missed a single one of his events. She proudly stood among the other parents when he received another certificate. Your son is very talented, the teachers would tell her. He should apply to an art institute. And again, she counted, budgeted, saved. Courses, books, paints all cost money. She switched to cheaper cosmetics, gave up her pool membership, stopped buying new clothes. At night, she sat marking student papers for extra pay. You're going to wear yourself out, Marta, said the now aged Dolores, visiting them. Look at those bags under your eyes. It's just temporary, Marta waved her off. Once he's in university, he'll have a stipend. Dolores only shook her head. Just don't forget about yourself once in a while. I'm not sacrificing for him, Marta objected. You don't understand, Dolores. He is my joy, my purpose. I'm doing this for me too. At 15, Diego got into modern art. He started wearing all black, grew out his bangs, and spent hours online studying the works of Picasso and Banksy. This is just scribbles, Marta said in confusion, looking at his new piece's strange lines and paint splashes. It's abstract art, Mom. Diego rolled his eyes, expressing emotions through color and form. She tried to understand, to support him. She signed up for an art history course at the local museum, read books about avant-garde artists. You're not a mom, you're an art critic, Diego teased, catching her studying yet another art album. Are you learning to understand me? Learning not to fall behind. She smiled back. At 17, he announced he wanted to apply to a prestigious art institute in the capital. Mom, the best professors are there, he said passionately, and there are so many more opportunities. She looked at her grown-up son and saw the tiny newborn she had once found in a stairwell. For 17 years, every single day, Marta had lived in fear that his real mother would show up and take him away. And every single day, she silently thanked fate that it hadn't happened. The capital is an expensive city, she said cautiously. Not everyone gets a dorm room. I'll work part-time, Diego reassured her. I can draw portraits on the street or design logos for websites. They were sitting in the kitchen of their small apartment, drinking tea, making plans. There were only a few weeks left before final exams. You know, Diego said suddenly, looking at her over his cup, sometimes I wonder how your life would have turned out if not for me. You could have. Don't even think that. Marta interrupted. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. He smiled with boyish shyness. Really? A mother's heart doesn't know the word stranger, she said quietly, reaching out and brushing an unruly lock of hair from his forehead. You are my son, my only and beloved one. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was long, persistent, unpleasant. Who could that be? Diego frowned. It's late. Probably the neighbor asking for salt. Or maybe Dolores decided to check in, Marta shrugged, getting up from the table. She went to open the door completely unaware that behind it stood her past, ready to shatter 17 years of happiness in an instant. The private clinic Madre y Niño greeted Selena with sterile whiteness, soft lighting, and the scent of expensive air freshener. The exact same kind she used in her car, an $80 French fragrance. Respectable patients in designer clothes whispered quietly in the waiting area, flipping through glossy magazines. Selena adjusted the gold bracelet on her wrist and smoothed her cashmere blouse. Moreno, Selena, came a voice from the speaker. Please proceed to room 304. She stood up, squaring her shoulders. At 39, she looked no older than 30. Regular salon treatments, a personal trainer, and a strict diet were paying off. But in recent months, something had cracked in her appearance, faint shadows under her eyes, a crease between her brows that even Botox couldn't hide. Take a seat, Selena, said Dr. Lopez, removing her glasses. Selena knew that gesture it meant bad news. I have your latest test results. Well, what is it this time? Selena tried to keep her voice light. Hormones again? The doctor paused, scanning the papers as if seeing them for the first time. But Selena knew she had already reviewed them, she was just delaying. Selena, the doctor finally looked up, you won't be able to have children anymore. The world blurred for a moment. Selena stared at the doctor's perfectly painted lips, her flawless hairstyle, the expensive pen in her hand, unable to breathe. Is it final? She whispered. I'm afraid so. Even the last IVF attempts failed. You've developed scarring in the fallopian tubes, likely a consequence of. The doctor hesitated. Your lifestyle and your youth. Selena looked away. Drugs. The doctor didn't say it, but the word hung in the air. Those damned years when she was 20, fresh from the provinces, addicted to heroin. Years she tried hard to erase from memory, or at least pretend they never existed. What about surrogacy? She asked, grabbing at one last straw. With your diagnosis, even with surrogacy the chances are minimal, the doctor sighed. Your eggs are low quality. You might want to consider adoption. Selena heard no more. Adoption? She needed her child her own, with Rodrigo. That's why she'd married him, rich, powerful, 18 years older. That's why she tolerated his bossy tone, his late-night business calls, the boring corporate events. All for a child. A child who would be the heir to his business empire. She walked out of the clinic without saying goodbye, got into her white Lexus parked under a no parking sign, and froze with her hands gripping the wheel. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her mascara. Selena stared at the passing cars and the people hurrying along the sidewalks. And then, a memory surfaced from the depths. A hospital room. The smell of bleach. A nurse with a harsh, judgmental look. What are we going to do with the baby? Baby, what happened? Rodrigo Morales put down his tablet, filled with stock reports, and looked closely at his wife. Selena sat on the edge of their enormous bed, still in her street clothes, blank stare, slumped shoulders. He hadn't seen her like this since they came back from Switzerland after their second failed IVF. The doctor said I'll never have children, she said quietly, staring at a fixed point. Never. Rodrigo sighed heavily. He'd seen it coming. At 50, he dreamed of an heir. He hadn't built an empire to let it fall into the hands of distant relatives or business partners. We'll think of something, he said, sitting beside her and placing an arm around her shoulders. Maybe we can adopt a boy. Rodrigo, Selena whispered suddenly, lifting tearful eyes to him, I had a baby once. A boy. Maybe we can find him? Rodrigo froze. He knew this story, one of the skeletons in her closet. At 21, at the height of her addiction, she'd given birth and left the baby in a stairwell. A decision she only ever mentioned during her darkest moments, usually in a drunken stupor. You don't even know if he's alive, Rodrigo said carefully. But what if he is? There was a flash of hope and calculation in Selena's eyes. What if someone good took him in? He'd be 17 now, almost 18. An adult. Rodrigo, he could be your heir, carry on your name. You don't even remember which building it was, Rodrigo shook his head. I do remember, Selena argued passionately. It was on Avenida Libertad, number 8. I was staying at a friend's place, ex-friend, actually. And I even have the date written down, January 10th, 2007. Rodrigo looked at her intently. In 11 years of marriage, he had never seen such determination in her eyes. I'll hire a private investigator, he said finally. A professional. We'll see what can be done. Selena threw her arms around him impulsively. Thank you, Rodrigo. I knew you'd help me. We'll find our boy. I'm sure of it. Rodrigo hugged her back, but unease crept into his chest. Our boy. But the boy wasn't his. He didn't even know who the father was. Selena had never said. We found him, Sergio Dominguez, a private detective with 20 years' experience, said plainly. He placed a slim folder on the table in front of the Morales couple. Selena snatched it up with trembling hands but hesitated to open it. Are you sure it's him? Rodrigo asked, tapping the table with his fingers. 99% sure, the detective nodded. Date and location match. The woman who raised him never had her own children. She found him in that exact stairwell, adopted him legally through child welfare. Everything was by the book, but he spread his hands. It can be contested. Selena finally opened the folder. The first thing she saw was a photo of a fair-haired young man standing beside an easel. Tall, lean, with delicate features. The eyes, her eyes the same shape, the same expression, and the nose identical to her father's. It's him, Selena whispered, a lump rising in her throat. My boy. Lopez, Diego, Dominguez continued. Senior year. Preparing to apply to an art institute. Very talented, won regional competitions. Published in art journals. An artist, Selena looked at her husband. My grandfather was an artist, remember? I told you. Rodrigo nodded, reviewing the documents. And the mother? Marta Lopez. Literature teacher. Single. Never married. All the paperwork lists her as the biological mother, but the detective pointed at the medical records. C. Diego was born in January 2007. Just a month before that, Lopez was undergoing pre-op testing for an appendectomy. No signs of pregnancy. Either a miracle, or he's not hers. What else? Selena asked impatiently. Anything distinctive? Birthmarks? There's a mole on his left shoulder, the detective nodded. Crescent-shaped. Selena went pale. I have the exact same one. So did my father. Rodrigo exchanged a look with the detective. Do you have their address? Of course. They live modestly, in a one-room flat. Dominguez handed over a sheet of paper. School, art studio, all listed. Selena jumped to her feet. Let's go. Right now. Selena, wait. Rodrigo stopped her with a hand. We have to think this through. You can't just barge into someone else's life. Someone else's? She spun around. He's my son, Rodrigo. My blood. I gave birth to him. And abandoned him, Rodrigo said quietly. Selena froze, as if struck, then slowly sank into a chair. I was sick, she whispered. You know I wasn't in my right mind. And now you want to fix everything? Rodrigo stared at her. You think it's that simple? No, she shook her head. But I have to try. I have to at least see him. Speak to him. He's my only son, Rodrigo. The only one I'll ever have. Rodrigo sighed. He recognized that look when Selena made up her mind. She couldn't be swayed. Fine, he said at last. But let's speak to a lawyer first. Find out how to handle this properly. Marta was grading student essays when the doorbell rang. 3 short rings and 1 long. Diego's signature when he forgot his keys. Coming, she called, setting her pen down. Forgot your keys again, you rascal? But it wasn't Diego's lanky figure behind the door. It was a woman around 40, tall and slim, wearing an elegant sand-colored pantsuit. Her hair was swept into a chic bun, makeup flawless, diamond earrings glinting in the light. Lopez, Marta? The woman asked in a low, slightly husky voice. Yes, Marta answered, confused, automatically tugging at her old t-shirt. And you are? Morales, Selena, the woman said, handing over a business card with gold embossing. May I come in? We need to talk. Marta hesitated but nodded and stepped aside, letting the stranger into the apartment. She smelled of expensive perfume, a soft, subtle scent that clashed sharply with the aroma of fried potatoes Marta had just made for dinner. Come to the kitchen, Marta offered. Have a seat. Selena's eyes quickly took in the small kitchen, peeling paint, a carefully mended tablecloth, an old gas stove. A flicker of pity crossed her face, quickly replaced by resolve. I won't beat around the bush, she said, sitting on the edge of the chair. I'm your son's biological mother. I've come to take him back. Marta froze. Her heart skipped a beat, then pounded like a drum. She gripped the back of the chair, her legs going weak. What are you talking about? She managed to say. What child? Diego Lopez, Selena said firmly. The child you found in the stairwell 18 years ago. Marta's vision darkened. This can't be happening. It just can't be. 18 years had passed, 18 years of fearing exactly this moment. I don't understand. Marta began, but Selena was already opening her leather handbag and pulling out documents. Here, she said, laying the papers in front of Marta. DNA test results. I found the cap I left him in. It had some of my hair. They matched it with a sample we got from Diego's comb at the art studio. The match is 99.9%. And here medical records. He has a crescent-shaped mole on his left shoulder, just like mine. Marta stared silently at the papers. The letters blurred. This was a nightmare. Her worst nightmare. I gave birth to a boy 18 years ago, Selena continued, her voice now tinged with pleading. I was unwell, using drugs, couldn't care for him. I left him in the stairwell with a note. You found him. You abandoned him, Marta whispered, lifting her eyes. Like trash. I was sick. Selena raised her voice. Not in control. But now I'm healthy. I have a home, a family, resources. I can give him everything. After 18 years? Marta felt a wave of anger rising inside. You weren't there when he was sick. When he cried at night. When he took his first steps. When? I'm his mother. Selena snapped. I gave birth to him. And who was there all 18 years? Marta stood up. Who rocked him at night? Who taught him to read? Who sat by his hospital bed when he had pneumonia? Who skipped meals to buy him paint? Me. I am his mother. They stood facing each other. 2 women. 2 mothers. 1 son. One polished, elegant, with cold determination in her eyes. The other dressed in an old t-shirt, strands of gray in her hair, but with the same fierce resolve. I have money, Selena said after a pause. I can give Diego everything he's ever dreamed of: art school in the capital, studies abroad, connections to top galleries. He can become a famous artist. He can have a future. Money can't buy a mother's love. Marta shook her head. You think I don't love him? Tears sparkled in Selena's eyes. I've thought about him all these years. Every day. Every minute. And now the doctors say I'll never have another child. He's my only son. At that moment, the front door slammed shut, and familiar footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mom, you home? There's a super fancy Lexus parked outside. Diego froze in the kitchen doorway, glancing from his mother to the unfamiliar woman. Selena slowly rose to her feet, unable to take her eyes off him. Mom, who is this? Diego asked cautiously, instinctively stepping toward Marta. Selena stared at him through tears. That same forehead, the same eyes, her blood, her flesh. Time seemed to stand still. My God, she whispered. He looks just like me. He's definitely my boy. Mom, Diego said, his voice tight as he looked at Marta. What's going on? Marta opened her mouth, but no words came out. How could she explain? How could she tell her son that the woman standing before them was his biological mother, the one who carried him, gave birth to him, and abandoned him in the freezing cold? God, why are you doing this to me? She whispered, covering her face with her hands. Diego stepped toward her and gently placed his arm around her shoulders. Mom, what is it? What's happening? Selena watched the scene with a mix of jealousy and pain. He was calling another woman mom. Her son. Her child. Diego, she said, taking a step forward. My name is Selena. I'm your biological mother. Diego froze. For several seconds, the kitchen fell into complete silence. Then he gave a nervous laugh. What kind of joke is this? Mom, what's going on? Marta looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Diego, I have something to tell you. She placed a cup of tea in front of him, though he hadn't asked for one. Her hands were trembling, the tea spilling over the rim. The drops stained the tablecloth like little wounds. They sat alone in the kitchen. The woman had left, promising to return the next day. Marta had one night to explain everything. Sweetheart, sit down, she said softly. There's something I need to tell you. Diego didn't sit. He leaned against the fridge, arms crossed tightly over his chest. No longer a boy or man. When had he grown up? Just yesterday he was barely tall enough to reach the table. So it's true? You're not my real mother? His voice was tight like a stretched wire. Was what she said true? Marta wiped her hands on her house robe. Her mouth felt dry, like she hadn't had water in days. Please, sit, Diego, she asked again. She couldn't bear to speak this truth while looking up at him. He reluctantly dropped into the chair across from her, his eyes wary, fixed on her face. I found you when you were just a few days old, Marta began, staring not at him but at her own hands. In a stairwell. It was January. Freezing. Diego remained silent, but Marta could feel the storm beginning to boil inside him. You were wrapped in a blanket. Next to you was a note. I can't raise him. I'm sorry. I took you home. Filed the papers through child services. I adopted you. The silence was so dense it felt like it could be sliced with a knife. Diego stared into space, his jaw clenched. You lied to me for 17 years, he said at last, each word sharp and deliberate. So I'm not your son? You are my son. Marta leaned forward, trying to take his hand, but he pulled away. You're my child, my beloved. I'm not yours, Diego shouted, jumping to his feet. I'm someone else's kid, a stranger. You're not even related to me. I didn't give birth to you from my womb, but from my heart. Marta stood too, her eyes full of tears. Do you think being a mother is just about giving birth? What about the one who gave her life to you for 17 years drop by drop? Isn't she a mother? You should have told me. Diego's voice quivered with held-back tears. I had a right to know. And what would that have changed? Marta spread her arms helplessly. Would you have loved me less, knowing I didn't give birth to you? Diego clutched his head, running his fingers through his hair just like he used to do as a child when upset. I don't know. But you lied to me my whole life, and now this woman comes and says she's my mother. She abandoned you. Marta's voice turned steely. Left you in the cold stairwell. She said she was sick. Diego shouted. She was a drug addict. She didn't know what she was doing. And you're defending her? Marta couldn't believe what she was hearing. Defending the one who threw you away like a stray kitten? Diego turned toward the window. Outside, a light June rain drizzled. Raindrops slid down the glass like tears. What if she's right? He said suddenly, his voice hollow. What if you stole me? Marta staggered as if struck. Her heart skipped a beat, then began pounding so hard it hurt to breathe. How could you say that? She whispered. How could you even think it? How would I know? Diego turned back, his face twisted with pain. I don't know anything. My whole life's a lie. Who am I? Whose child am I? What's the truth? He grabbed his jacket from the hook. Where are you going? Marta asked, frightened. It's raining. Out for a walk. I need to think, he said without looking at her. I can't be here right now. The door slammed so hard the cups on the kitchen shelf rattled. Marta was alone. She sank into a chair and covered her face with her hands. It had all collapsed. 17 years of happiness. 17 years of love shattered in a single moment. Diego walked the rainy streets, not caring where he went. The rain grew heavier, soaking his jacket, dripping down his neck. He didn't notice. His head was chaos. Selena's face swam before his eyes. The same eyes as his. The same nose. And beside her Marta's face. Familiar. Home. Not mom. Without realizing it, His feet brought him to the stairwell of the building on Avenida Libertad, where it all began, where he was found, or stolen. Who could he believe? His phone buzzed nonstop in his pocket. Marta was probably losing her mind. But he couldn't talk to anyone now. The rain pushed him under the building's awning. Diego leaned against the cold wall and slowly slid down to the ground, clutching his head in his hands. How do I go on? What do I do with this truth that's tearing me apart? The next morning was bright and sunny, mockingly so, considering the tension hanging over the Lopez home. Diego had returned just after midnight, soaked to the bone, eyes swollen from crying. He went straight to his room and locked the door. Marta hadn't slept all night, listening for any sound on the other side of the wall. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. 3 people stood on the doorstep: Selena Morales, her husband, a distinguished silver-haired man in an expensive suit, and another man holding a leather briefcase. "We'd like to speak to Diego," Selena said without greeting. "He's not home," Marta lied, blocking the doorway. "I heard music inside the apartment," the silver-haired man said gently. "I'm Rodrigo Morales, Selena's husband and Diego's potential stepfather. This is our lawyer, Esteban Medina. You have no right to barge into my home." Marta began to close the door, but Rodrigo held it open. "I'm afraid we do," he said, nodding to the lawyer, who pulled papers from his briefcase. "We've filed a petition to establish maternity. We have DNA test results confirming Selena is Diego's biological mother." "Mom, who is it?" A sleepy Diego appeared at the end of the hallway in a t-shirt and sweatpants. Selena's face lit up. "Diego, good morning." Marta stepped back helplessly, letting the uninvited guests into the apartment. Everything felt so wrong. In the small living room, Rodrigo quickly took control. "Diego, we understand this is a shock for you, but facts are stubborn things. Selena is your biological mother. We have all the proof." "I don't need proof," Diego said flatly. "I can see we look alike." Selena leaned forward. "Diego, we want you to return to your real family. I know you're used to another life, and we won't rush anything. But look." She pulled photographs from her purse and laid them on the table. "This will be your home," she said proudly, pointing to a picture of a 3-story mansion with a swimming pool. "You'll have your own studio, plenty of light, the best materials for your art. We've heard you dream of enrolling in the Art Institute," Rodrigo added. "I'm the chairman of the board at the Velázquez Institute of Fine Arts. One word from me, and you're accepted into the best program." Diego silently examined the photos. Marta saw the spark in his eyes when he saw the spacious studio with large windows. She could never give him anything like that. "And that's not all," Rodrigo continued. "A car, international travel, the world's top art exhibitions. You're talented. We want to give your talent everything it needs to flourish." "And what do you want in return?" Diego suddenly asked, raising his eyes. Selena was caught off guard. "Nothing, sweetheart. You're our son. We want nothing in return. But you want me to move in with you." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Eventually, Selena nodded. "When you're ready. We understand you need time to adjust." Diego glanced at Marta, who stood by the window. She looked at him with such pain that his heart clenched. "Mom," he said. And Selena flinched, realizing he wasn't speaking to her. "Why didn't you tell me? I had a right to know." Marta bit her lip. "I was afraid to lose you," she whispered. "Afraid that one day she would come, and you would leave." "And what would you have done in her place?" Diego asked suddenly, nodding toward Selena. "If someone told you your child was alive found, wouldn't you come for them?" Marta froze. The question hit right at the core. "I would have," she said barely audibly. "I'd have come back even from the grave." The lawyer, who had remained silent until then, cleared his throat. "I must inform you that legally, the situation is quite complex. Adoption without the consent of the biological mother may be contested, especially if the mother was in a state of emotional distress or under the influence of narcotics at the time she gave up the child." "Are you trying to scare me?" Marta snapped. "Do you think I'll give up my son over a bunch of papers? I found you in a stairwell, I nursed you back to life. And now you're betraying me?" She cried when she saw Diego lingering over the photos of a luxurious life. "I'm not betraying anyone," Diego exploded. "I just want to understand who I am. You're my son." Both women shouted at once, then fell silent, glaring at each other. Diego jumped up. "I'm not some object to be pulled in opposite directions," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm a person. I have feelings." With that, he ran out of the room. The front door slammed shut. "See what you've done," Marta hissed through clenched teeth. "What we've done?" Selena rose from her chair. You're the one who hid the truth from him for 17 years. Rodrigo placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. Selena, calm down. We won't solve this in one day. He turned to Marta. Marta, we understand your pain, but please try to understand ours. Selena is Diego's biological mother. She can't have any more children. He's her only blood tie to the future. Marta remained silent, staring out the window. There, on the bench outside the building, sat Diego, shoulders slumped, head in his hands. Blood isn't everything, she said at last. I raised him. I love him. We'll love him too, Rodrigo said gently. And we can give him things you never could: education, connections, a future. You think money can give you everything? Marta scoffed bitterly. Even a mother's love? Selena stepped closer. I'm not buying him. I just want to help. You see how he lives in this box, with no prospects. He lived happily, Marta snapped, until you showed up. Rodrigo cleared his throat. We'll leave our business card. Let Diego call when he's ready to talk. He pulled a checkbook from his jacket pocket. In the meantime, at least allow us to help financially. Diego needs paint, supplies. Leave, Marta said quietly. Just go. When the door finally closed behind their guests, Marta leaned against the wall and shut her eyes. Everything was crumbling. Her whole life, everything she had built over 17 years, was falling apart like a house of cards. So what happens now? Asked Dolores when Marta dropped by later that evening. The elderly woman brewed strong tea and poured a splash of cognac from a bottle labeled Heart Drops. I don't know, Marta shook her head. Diego walks around like a ghost, doesn't say a word. And today, out of nowhere, he asked for his birth certificate, wanted to know who's listed as his father. And that's Selena? Dolores pressed her lips together. She called, invited Diego to meet without me, Marta said bitterly. He said he'd think about it. And what does he say? What does he feel? Marta shrugged. You lied to me for 17 years. How can I ever trust you again? She quoted her son. What do you even say to that? Dolores shook her head. Oh, Marta, maybe you really should have told him earlier. Prepared him. And how do you prepare someone for something like that? Marta cried. How do you tell a child he was abandoned? That his mother threw him away? Dolores sighed. Now it came as a shock. That's worse. Night had fallen. Marta stared up at the sky, thinking how her life had now split into before and after. Just yesterday, she and Diego were making plans for the future. And today, he looked at her like she was a stranger. Those Morales people, they're wealthy, huh? Dolores asked cautiously. Very, Marta nodded. A mansion, cars, connections. They're promising Diego the world. Do you think he'll go? Marta closed her eyes. I don't know, Dolores. He's 17. At that age, it's so easy to be swept away, especially a boy from a modest family. They sat in silence. Outside, music played and young people laughed. Life went on. Maybe you never had the right to keep him, Dolores said suddenly, then bit her tongue when she saw Marta's face twist with pain. You too? Marta whispered. You think I stole him? No, Marta. The old woman panicked. I'm just thinking aloud. Maybe. Legally speaking. To hell with the law. Marta slammed her fist on the table. I pulled him from the trash and now I'm supposed to hand him over to her. She couldn't finish. She burst into tears. Dolores awkwardly put her arm around her shoulders. There, sweetheart, don't cry. It'll all work out. But both of them knew nothing would ever be the same again. Never. Back home, Marta found a surprise. On the kitchen table lay an expensive smartphone in a glossy box. What's this? She asked Diego, who appeared in the doorway. Selena gave it to me, he replied, not meeting her eyes. We met today. Had coffee at Starbucks. Marta turned pale. You went to see her? No, Diego shook his head. We just met in the city. Talked. About what? Marta tried to keep her voice steady. Diego shrugged. About everything. Her life. Why she did what she did. How she's lived all these years. And you believe her? Marta couldn't hide the bitterness. Believe that she suffered? That she remembered you? I don't know, Diego answered honestly. But she told me how it happened. She was very young, an addict, homeless, broke. The baby's father was some random guy, she doesn't even remember his name. She wanted an abortion, but it was too late. Then she gave birth and realized she couldn't cope. So she left you in a stairwell. Marta couldn't hold back. Not in a hospital, not at an orphanage, but like a stray puppy. She thought someone would find me quickly, Diego said softly. She picked a building where people were always coming and going. Marta shook her head. And you're excusing her? No, he lifted his eyes to hers. But I'm trying to understand. She was 21, sick, desperate. She made a terrible mistake, but she regrets it. And now, rich and successful, she's come to take you back. Marta struggled to keep the tremor out of her voice. Trying to buy you off with expensive gifts? She says she loves me, Diego said simply. That she's thought about me all these years and wants to make it right. Marta stayed silent, staring at the expensive phone on the table. How could she possibly compete with that? With a mansion, a car, a future offered by the Morales name? She invited me to their house, Diego said hesitantly. Just for the weekend. Just to visit, to see how they live. Marta's heart sank. And you want to go? She asked barely audibly. Diego looked down. I don't know. I think I should get to know them better. Understand who she is. Who they are. And what about your prep courses? Marta tried to find any excuse to keep him. Exams are coming up soon. Rodrigo promised to help me get in, Diego admitted, embarrassed. He has connections at the institute. I see, Marta felt a lump rise in her throat. So the courses aren't needed anymore? And everything I taught you about honesty, about hard work that doesn't matter either? Mom. Diego's voice held hurt now. I never said I was selling myself for money. I just want to know them. Marta turned to the window so he wouldn't see her tears. Do as you think best, Diego. You're an adult. A heavy silence hung between them. Finally, Diego came up to her and awkwardly touched her shoulder. Mom, I'm not betraying you. I swear. I just need to make sense of all this. Of myself. Marta nodded without turning around. What could she say? Don't go? Stay with me? She'd spent all these years teaching him to be strong, independent. And now he was making a choice on his own. Was it the right one? The gray paper with the official seal felt cold and lifeless, like stone. A court summons, petition to establish maternity and contest adoption. The black and white lines stabbed at Marta's eyes. She sat in the kitchen, rereading the document over and over, as if hoping the words might suddenly change. The morning July sun flooded the small kitchen, highlighting the scratches on the table, the worn tablecloth, the chipped mug with cold tea inside. Mom, why are you up? Diego stood in the doorway, sleepy, disheveled, in lounge pants and a t-shirt so familiar, yet so distant. The summons came. Marta handed him the paper. Selena filed a lawsuit. Diego frowned as he skimmed the official text. Unlawful possession of a child? He looked up, puzzled. What kind of nonsense is this? Your biological mother believes I had no right to adopt you. Marta tried to speak evenly, though her voice quivered. That I should have found her and gotten her consent first. But she left you a note. Diego protested. Can't raise him. I'm sorry. Isn't that a refusal? Legally, Marta gave a bitter smile. A child must be officially relinquished at the hospital, in front of witnesses. She left you in a stairwell. Diego sat down on a stool across from her, rubbing his face with both hands. A gesture he'd learned from Marta when he was just a little boy. So what now? He asked. There'll be a trial, Marta said simply. In 2 weeks. Rain beat against the roof of the luxury car parked outside the law firm Medina Partners. Selena nervously tapped her manicured nails against the leather folder on her lap. We're late, Esteban, she snapped at the lawyer, glancing at her Cartier watch. I have a meeting with my designer in an hour. Everything is under control, Selena, Esteban Medina replied calmly, flipping through the documents. Today's only the preliminary hearing. The case is practically sewn up. We have the DNA results, the medical records, and evidence that you were under the influence of drugs and not in a sound state of mind. She can't fight back? Selena interrupted, nervously adjusting her perfect hairstyle. That teacher? The lawyer shook his head. Come on, just an ordinary woman with no connections, no resources. Who's going to listen to her? Besides, the facts are on our side. You're the biological mother. You never gave up your parental rights legally. Good, Selena exhaled in relief. Very good. May I ask, Esteban leaned in slightly, why you're so intent on getting your son back now after 17 years? Selena frowned and turned to the window. I already explained. The doctor said I can't have more children. Diego is my only son. Is that all? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. And his artistic talent has nothing to do with it? Selena turned sharply. What does that have to do with anything? I did some digging, Esteban shrugged. Your father was a well-known painter. Not very successful in his lifetime, but his work has gained value posthumously. And now it turns out your son inherited his talent. Selena pressed her lips together and looked back out the window. Fine. If you want the truth, I don't just need a son, I need an heir. Someone to carry the family name. Rodrigo wants to leave a legacy, you understand? We have all this money, influence, opportunity, and no one to pass it to. And here's this boy, with talent, with my genes. It's the perfect solution. The lawyer fell silent, smoothing a crease in his trousers. Selena, you must not say things like that in court. There, you're a loving mother who has suffered for 17 years, thinking of the son you abandoned while not in your right mind. Of course, Selena smirked. I'm not stupid, Esteban. Diego was sitting in the studio, spattered with paint. A small attic room in the old cultural center, which the director had allowed him to use, had become his sanctuary. It smelled of paint, turpentine, and freedom. On the easel stood an unfinished canvas, an unusual piece, unlike anything he'd done before. Two female figures on a dark background. One bathed in golden light, with a flawless, cold beauty. The other shrouded in shadow, eyes filled with tears, yet glowing with a soft inner light. Two mothers, that was what he titled the painting. The door creaked. Diego turned. Marta was standing in the doorway, a bag in her hands. I brought you something to eat, she said, hesitantly stepping in. May I? Of course, he nodded, putting down his brush. Marta placed the bag on the table, stealing glances at the painting. Since the summons had arrived, they had barely spoken, each locked in their own pain. It's an interesting piece, she said softly. It's about us, Diego admitted awkwardly. About this whole situation. Marta stepped closer, studying the details. She's in gold, I'm in tears? She smiled sadly. Not exactly, Diego shook his head. Look, her gold is on the outside. Yours comes from within. See? Marta looked closer. Indeed, upon careful inspection, the shadowed figure emitted a warm glow from the heart. It's beautiful, she whispered. So deep. I don't know what to do, Mom, Diego suddenly confessed, sinking into the worn couch. I'm completely lost. Marta gently sat beside him, afraid to break the fragile moment of honesty. They're courting you hard? Diego nodded. They showed me their house, huge, 3 floors. There's a whole room for a studio, with a north-facing window, perfect light. Rodrigo says he'll buy any materials I need, even rare Italian paints. They even know the director of the Prado Museum. Tempting, Marta said, trying to sound neutral. They're offering me a different life. Diego stared through the wall. Opportunities one never dreamed of. And maybe she's right. Maybe I do need a different life. Marta stayed silent, looking down at her hands, nails bitten, calluses from years of housework. I can't give you a mansion or connections, she finally said. Just love. But I have enough of it for your entire life, and more. Diego turned to her, tears in his eyes. I know, Mom. And I don't know how to choose. They're my blood, but you're my life. The district court buzzed like a disturbed beehive. In the small courtroom sat not only the parties involved, but curious neighbors, local journalists, and teachers from Diego's school. The story of a wealthy woman returning after 17 years to claim the son she once abandoned had shaken the whole town. Marta sat straight-backed at the table, tense as a wire. Her knuckles were white from clutching her worn handbag. Inside it were all the documents, her entire life, proof of 17 years of motherhood. Beside her sat Luisa, a fellow literature teacher there to support her. On the other side, her modest attorney, recommended by the school's legal advisor. Across from them sat Selena with Rodrigo, behind them, Esteban Medina and his sharply dressed legal team with leather briefcases. Selena's face looked carved from marble, pale, her features sharpened. Only her eyes betrayed the storm within: anger, desperation, resolve. Diego sat on the witness bench, pale, worn. In the last month, he had aged years. There was a new depth in his eyes, the depth of someone who has felt real pain. He now sat between two sides, as though stranded in a war zone. Sleepless nights had etched themselves onto his young face. This hearing is now in session, announced the judge, a middle-aged woman with a weary face. We are hearing the case of citizen Selena Morales versus citizen Marta Lopez regarding the establishment of maternity and nullification of adoption. The lawyers began presenting their cases. Esteban Medina spoke smoothly and convincingly about a young woman, drugged and unaware, who had left her baby. About how she later got treatment, built a life, created a family. How for 17 years she had thought about her son. And now, with doctors declaring she could have no more children, she wanted to reclaim her only child. We have all the evidence, he concluded. DNA results, witness testimonies, medical documents. Citizen Lopez unlawfully kept the child without making reasonable efforts to find the biological mother. Marta's attorney paled next to the seasoned lawyer. He spoke hesitantly, nervously fumbling with his folder. My client acted strictly within the law, he argued. She reported the found infant to the police and child welfare authorities. No one was looking for the child. There was a note of surrender. And then 17 years of care, of love. Feelings have no legal bearing, Esteban cut in. The law is the law. A murmur swept the courtroom. The judge called for order. Citizen Lopez, can you provide proof that you made every effort to locate the child's biological mother? The judge asked. Marta stood up. I reported it to the police, filed a statement. They searched for the mother but found no one. Then I filed adoption papers through child services. Everything was legal. Do you have any documents confirming those search efforts? Marta looked helplessly at her lawyer. It was 17 years ago. I don't know. I wasn't given any such papers. We have a statement from the police, Esteban interjected, that a formal case was opened and closed within a month due to lack of results. No real efforts were made to locate the biological mother. The judge nodded, jotting notes. Marta felt the ground slipping from beneath her. Was she really going to lose him? Was she going to lose her son over paperwork? Witness testimonies began. Selena brought a former neighbor who confirmed that in January 2007, Selena had indeed given birth but had been strung out on drugs. Marta called Diego's teachers, neighbors. All testified in one voice, she was a wonderful mother. Diego had grown up happy, loved, and full of talent. The court decides fates, but the heart does not judge, said the old literature teacher softly when asked her opinion. For 17 years, Marta has been this boy's mother, a real mother. Money can't replace 17 years of love, added Uncle Juan, the school guard, who had known Diego since first grade. That boy grew up in her arms. But the judge remained unmoved, occasionally glancing at the clock. The law was the law. The biological mother had superior rights, especially with lawyers like these. I call Diego Lopez to the stand, the judge announced. The room fell silent. Diego rose slowly and walked to the witness box. Over the past month, he had lost weight, and dark circles settled under his eyes. All his former boyish carefreeness had vanished, replaced by a mature seriousness. Diego, the judge began, you are now 17. By law, your opinion will be taken into account in the court's decision. Tell us, with whom would you like to stay? Your biological mother, Selena Morales, or the woman who raised you, Marta Lopez? Diego scanned the courtroom. Selena looked at him hopefully, leaning forward slightly. Marta with worry and pain, wringing a tissue in her hands. He began, then faltered. I don't know. Murmurs rose in the courtroom. The judge tapped her gavel. Silence. Continue, Diego. The young man ran a hand through his hair. Marta, my mom has always been there. I love her. But Selena, she's my blood, and she's offering me opportunities one never even dreamed of. So you're leaning toward staying with your biological mother? The judge clarified. Diego hesitated. I don't know. I'm confused. I need time. The boy should choose for himself. A loud voice suddenly rang out from the back. Everyone turned. Dolores, hunched over and walking with a cane but with a determined expression, made her way down the aisle. She held a worn cardboard box in her hands. Ma'am, who are you, and what are you doing here? The judge asked sternly. I'm a witness, the elderly woman snapped. Dolores Vasquez, neighbor in their building. I was there when Marta found the baby and I saved something important. Selena frowned and leaned toward her lawyer. Who is that? Esteban shrugged. The old woman wasn't on the official list of witnesses. The judge nodded. Very well. Let's hear what she has to say. Please approach the witness stand. Grunting softly, Dolores made her way to the front and placed the box on the table. Here's what I'll say. When Marta found that little boy, her first words were, how can I give him away? He's all alone in this world. And you, she pointed a gnarled finger at Selena, left him in the hallway. It was January. Freezing. Another half hour and he would have frozen to death. I didn't have a choice. Selena cried out. I was sick. You had the choice to leave him at the hospital legally, Dolores retorted. But you dumped him like a stray puppy. God forgive you. The courtroom erupted again. The judge called for order. Miss Vasquez, do you have any physical evidence? The judge asked, nodding to the box. I do, Dolores said. Diego, look, these are your drawings from when you were 5. She opened the box and pulled out a stack of children's drawings. Bright, naive, clumsy, and deeply touching. Each showed a female figure with an oversized head and a huge smile. Underneath, in large printed letters, "My mom is the most beautiful." I kept them, the old woman explained, handing the drawings to the judge. Marta had tons of them, but threw some out during the last renovation. I saved the very first ones just in case. The judge examined the pictures carefully, then handed them to both legal teams. They will be entered into the record. What do childish scribbles have to do with this case? Esteban objected. This is emotion, not legal fact. One more thing. Dolores pulled a yellowed piece of paper from the box, folded into quarters. The original note that was with the boy. "I can't raise him. Forgive me. Here, son." She handed it to Diego. "Look at the handwriting." Diego unfolded the note with trembling hands. 3 words, scrawled in uneven script. He looked up at Selena. "Is this your handwriting, Selena?" She flushed. "I told you I was out of it, on drugs. How could I remember what I wrote or how?" "Well, here's what I think." Dolores turned to the judge. "I'm 72. I've seen a lot, and I know when someone's lying. This lady here," she nodded at Selena, "doesn't love that boy. She wants something else from him." "That's slander." Selena shot up. "How dare you?" "Then prove you love him," the old woman said calmly. "How? With money? With connections?" Marta, she gave her whole life to that boy. Every ounce of strength. Diego sat, eyes locked on the drawings the judge had returned to him. His fingers traced the crooked lines drawn in crayon. A wave of childhood memories crashed over him. Mom reading him stories. Taking him to school for the first time. Sitting by his bed when he was sick. Hot tea with raspberries, lullabies, a kiss on the forehead. His eyes stung with uninvited tears. He looked up and met Marta's eyes. She was looking at him with such love, such hope, and such pain that his heart clenched. "Your Honor," he suddenly said, rising to his feet. "I'd like to say something else, if I may." Silence fell again. The judge nodded. "Go ahead, Diego." The boy clutched the drawing in his hand like it was a lifeline. "I'm grateful to Selena for the life she gave me. And I understand she's offering me a lot for my future. But," he paused, choosing his words, "my real life, my real childhood was given to me by another woman, Marta. And I would like to stay with her." Marta covered her face with her hands, unable to hold back the tears. Selena went pale, her perfectly manicured fingers digging into the chair's armrests. "Are you sure about your decision?" the judge asked. "Yes," Diego nodded. "But I'd like the chance to get to know Selena better, if she's willing." Rodrigo leaned toward his wife. "Selena, do you see? The boy is wise. He's not rejecting you completely." "Never," she whispered fiercely. "He's my son." "No, Selena," Rodrigo said wearily. "He's her son and always has been." Before the court retires to deliberate, the judge announced, "Do either party have any final statements or motions?" Esteban Medina stood. "Your Honor, my client would like to address the court and Diego personally." The judge frowned but nodded. "Briefly, please." Selena stood, straightening her shoulders. Her cream Chanel suit stood in stark contrast to Marta's simple dress, bought on sale for the start of the school year. "Your Honor," Selena's voice was unexpectedly soft, almost intimate. "I understand that to the public, I may look like a selfish woman trying to take someone's son away. But I am his mother, his blood. I carried him beneath my heart." She turned to Diego. "Son, I know this is hard. You're torn between past and future. But think about what awaits you here." She gestured to the courtroom. "A life of mediocrity in a small town? A job as an art teacher in a rundown school?" Marta flinched as if struck, but said nothing. "And I'm offering you the world," Selena continued, her voice filled with passion. "The best art academies in Europe. The studio you've dreamed of. Exhibitions in prestigious galleries. You're talented, you deserve more." She paused, pulled out her checkbook from her handbag. 2 million pesos, she said, writing the check in bold handwriting. "Right now. My final offer. You'll be rich." A wave of outraged whispers swept through the courtroom. The judge banged her gavel. "Miss Morales, that's inappropriate. You are attempting to exert undue influence." "I'm trying to give my son what he deserves," Selena cut in. "A future. A real chance, not a life of poverty with." Diego slowly stood up. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then he walked over to Dolores and took from the box the child's drawing, the one that read, "My mom is the most beautiful." He turned to the courtroom. "Love isn't for sale," he said quietly, but in the silence, his voice rang out clear and firm. Love is given freely. Selena froze, the check still in her hand. Diego continued, his voice growing stronger. I already have a mother. The one who painted with me for 17 years and believed in my talent. The one who stayed up all night when I was sick. The one who spent her last coin on paint for me while walking around in mended tights. He gently laid the drawing on the judge's desk. This is true wealth, not money, not connections, not fancy studios, but love, loyalty, sacrifice. I choose my mom. He turned to Selena, not an ATM. Selena swayed as if slapped. Rodrigo caught her by the elbow and helped her sit down. A spasm flickered across her face. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll regret it when you end up as no one. Better to be no one with love at your side than a rich man with a hole where his soul should be, Diego replied softly. The judge called a recess for deliberation. People poured into the hallway, murmuring about the unexpected turn of events. As the door closed behind the judge, a heavy silence settled over the courtroom. Selena sat staring into space. Rodrigo whispered something in her ear, but she didn't respond. Marta quietly wiped away tears. Dolores gently patted her hand. Diego came over and knelt beside his mother. Forgive me, Mom, for doubting. She embraced him tightly, tears streaming down her face. It's all right, my son. Everything's all right. I knew my heart wouldn't lie to me, she whispered, running her trembling hand through his hair like she had when he was a child. A mother's heart never lies. Selena and Rodrigo stood to the side. She was passionately saying something to him, and he was shaking his head. Then Rodrigo walked firmly over to Diego. Can I speak with you for a moment? Alone. They stepped aside. Rodrigo pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his blazer. You've made your choice, and I respect it. But I want you to know, the doors of our home are always open to you. And this, he handed Diego the envelope, is a check for your education, tuition, dorm, supplies. No strings attached. Just so your talent doesn't go to waste. Diego looked at the envelope, hesitant to take it. Why are you doing this? Rodrigo gave a sad smile. Maybe I understand better than Selena what real family is. My father would have done anything for me. I remember what that felt like, and I see the same in you and Marta. The recess ended. Everyone returned to the courtroom. The judge appeared troubled. All rise. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. Everyone stood. The judge looked over the room and began reading the decision. Considering all circumstances of the case, she began. And taking into account the expressed wishes of Diego Lopez, the court hereby rules. The claim filed by citizen Selena Morales is denied. The adoption of the child by Marta Lopez is recognized as legal and valid. A collective sigh of relief swept the room. Marta covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Diego wrapped his arm around her. However, the judge continued. Given the confirmed biological relationship, the court grants Selena Morales the right to communicate with her son, subject to his voluntary consent. Selena stood abruptly and left the courtroom without waiting for the session to end. Rodrigo lingered, nodded respectfully to Diego and Marta, and followed her out. As they exited the courthouse, Marta and Diego were met with a wall of people. Neighbors, teachers, Diego's classmates forming a living corridor and applauding. Someone shouted, "Hooray!" Others smiled through tears. Someone brought flowers. Someone brought champagne. "Mother's love has won," shouted old-school janitor Uncle Juan, and the applause grew louder. Dolores stood off to the side, leaning on her cane, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "You see, Diego," she said when they came to thank her, "a mother's heart can't be fooled. It always knows its child even if not by blood." They walked home hand in hand, like in the old days when Marta used to pick little Diego up from preschool. The September wind swirled golden leaves around them like coins too precious to pick up. They just wanted to walk together, side by side, feeling each other's presence. The day was drawing to a close. The late summer sun gilded the treetops. After a rainy morning, the air smelled of freshness and ozone. "Mom," Diego suddenly said, stopping. "Would you forgive her?" "Selena?" Marta stared into the distance. "I don't know, son. Maybe, with time. She's a victim of her own mistakes, of her past." "Rodrigo offered to pay for my education," Diego said, pulling out the envelope. "No conditions, just like that." Marta looked at her son carefully. "And what did you decide?" "I thought, maybe I should accept it," he said hesitantly. "Not for the money, but for the opportunity. I really do want to study, to become a real artist. And later, I'll pay it all back with interest." Marta smiled and took his hand. That's your decision, son. I'll support whatever you choose. But remember, never sell your soul, even for the biggest opportunity. Diego nodded, squeezing her hand tighter. You know, back in court, when I saw those childhood drawings, it was like something inside me broke. All the doubts, the back and forth. Suddenly, I saw it all so clearly. Home isn't walls or things. Home is where you're loved unconditionally. Marta wiped away a tear. Sometimes you have to almost lose something to truly appreciate it. They continued walking, speaking of the future, of plans, of hope. With each step, the heaviness of the past months faded, replaced by something new. A deep sense of gratitude and an even stronger bond between mother and son. Far across the city, in a luxurious mansion, Selena Morales sobbed behind a locked bathroom door. On the floor lay a shattered photo frame, the only picture ever taken by a private detective. Diego at his easel, painting intently. She had lost the battle for her son. But more than that, she had lost the battle with herself, with her pride, her emptiness, her attempt to fill the void with someone else's life. And in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, Diego pulled out a blank canvas and began a new painting. Homecoming, that's what he decided to call it. It would show a sunlit room and two figures. A mother and a son, standing by the window, holding hands, and looking toward the future. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the Academy of Fine Arts. Diego tore open the envelope with trembling hands, scanned the lines quickly, and suddenly let out a victorious shout. Mom! Full scholarship! I got in on the full scholarship! Marta rushed out of the kitchen, her hands still wet from washing dishes. Really? Really? They hugged, spinning around in their tiny room. After all the trials, after the nightmare of the past few months, this news felt like a miracle. So we won't need help from the Morales family, Marta said, unable to hide her relief. I never intended to accept it, Diego shook his head. I wanted to achieve everything on my own. We'll manage. The word rang like music. Not me, but us, together, as always, as it had been all these years. That same evening, Diego brought a canvas wrapped in paper out of his room. This is for you, Mom. I finished it. Marta unwrapped it and froze. The painting showed a heart, not anatomical, but symbolic, large and pulsing. Inside the heart, like through a window or portal, were two silhouettes, a woman cradling a child. Around them was darkness, cold, a snowstorm, but warmth radiated from the heart, shielding them from the world. A mother's heart. Marta read the title in the corner. Oh, Diego. You're the one who taught me how to love, Diego said softly, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Without you, I wouldn't be who I am. In October, Diego left for the capital to enroll, settle into the dormitory, and start a new chapter of life. Marta saw him off at the train station, like thousands of mothers sending their children into adulthood. She cried, told him to take care, dress warmly, eat well, ordinary, motherly words behind which hid a universe of love. Call me when you arrive, she repeated for the 10th time, adjusting the scarf around his neck. I will, Diego smiled, and I'll come home next weekend. The train was already at the platform. Passengers were taking their seats. They stood on the platform, unable to part, though they knew the separation would be brief. Mom, Diego suddenly said, looking her in the eyes. Now I know for sure, the greatest luck in my life was that you were the one who found me. Marta pressed her hand to her mouth, holding back sobs. And I know my mother's heart never failed me, she whispered. They embraced one last time. Diego picked up his bag and walked toward the carriage. At the door, he turned and waved. Marta waved back, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. Not bitter, but bright and cleansing. The train pulled away, carrying her son into his future. Marta stood on the platform until the last carriage disappeared from view. Then she slowly made her way to the exit. She would return to an apartment that, for the first time in 17 years, would be quiet and empty. But the emptiness didn't frighten her. It was a bright one, filled with hope and pride for her son. Motherhood isn't measured by documents, Marta thought as she walked through the autumn streets. But by the sleepless nights, the tears of joy and sorrow, the love given freely. Being a mother isn't biology, it's a calling. And with every fiber of her being, she knew it was true. Truth hard-earned, and confirmed by the life she had lived.
Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.